sure we're getting. Well, here we are, still here at Mill Village, in front of the Riverbank General Store and Cafe, and we're still here with Blake Conrad, part two of a little bit of history of this village. Continue on, please, Blake.
Okay, yeah, like I said, the late 1880s, up until the First World War, was the big period of development. Mill Village was not behind in its building of being up in the modern world. They, by 1883, they had a reading room here. So all the local papers would come into Port Medway from all over the world. So they were well informed about what was going on in the world. This continued on into 1912 when they built the Temperance Hall out here on the island. Your grandfather actually was one of the people who supplied half of the library for it, and actually over the years, for nearly 30 years, provided magazines, subscriptions directly to the organization.
Wow. And then the house that he purchased on the island, when was that? At what time?
He came here, as far as I can tell, your grandfather came here in 1905. He came with Richard Jones from Boston. They came up here. He came up here for the salmon fishing, and he came back later on in the fall for the moose hunting, because this was a moose hunting area. Tourism was just starting to develop at that time. The railroad had come in 1905, so they could actually come by train, which was the first time they could do that. So the area started to open up. Riverbank House, which was your grandfather's house, Island House rather. Riverbank House is the other one over here, which was Hub and Max. They were the two main hotels in the area. And your grandfather came in 1905. He came that summer for fishing with Richard Jones, came back in the fall for the moose hunting, and then he decided next spring when he came, he bought the place. He traded with John Phelan next door, and took over Island House. And he brought his family with him. It was quite a big to-do at the time, because he brought a black maid and a black chauffeur, which was odd at that time. And he also, in the summertime when he came, he also brought Swedish maids who served tea to the girls, because it was the social hub, because they built a tennis court. Tennis was just starting to take off in popularity in the community before they arrived. So they built a tennis court, and your great aunts, your aunts, whatever, the unique thing about them was they had a carriage, a wicker basket, and a pony wagon, which kids didn't have in those days. Kids weren't spoiled like that in those days, but they had a pony wagon. They could travel around wherever they wanted to go. So they traveled and were very sociable, visiting all the other ladies in the time, and they got involved in the temperance movement and that kind of thing. And as well, like I said, that's how they got involved with the libraries and stuff like that. But they kept the family. They added the porches that are over there now where Jay is on the island, your grandfather's place. Your grandfather added those big porches and stuff like that. It became like a social center in the summertime of the community. The garden parties, the community garden parties, had always been held at Island House from as far back as the 1880s. And it was continued on, and it was continued on by your Aunt Rita Phoebe until probably into the 1970s. She continued it almost up to the time she was of her death. They continued having the annual garden parties over there every year.
So that brings us more up to date here as to when I came here and started coming in the around 1950. And over beside me on the right here, which you can't see, is a small building which I know as Maud's Ice Cream Shop. So tell us a little bit about Maud and her ice cream shop.
Yeah, Maud came here as a young bride. She came here as a young bride, and she opened up this ice cream parlor. There were two ice cream parlors in the village at one time. It was such a busy spot, like I said, because of the amount of population. She operated the little place, and she operated the telephone office in behind. The telephone had come here. The Western Union Telegraph had come through in 1894, and it was actually operated out of the same house. And then the telephone office was taken over by the Mack family was called the Queens County Telephone Company, came through in 1905. And the Mack family had it until actually Maud took over. Probably, as far as I can tell, Maud took over probably in the 1920s. And this ice cream parlor was her sideline business, which was her entertainment. She ran it probably 30 years out of this little building. And then she went away, left the community after the death of her husband. She had left the community and went away. She came back when she was well into her 80s. She told me she came home to die. I was talking to her in the evening. She said she came home to die, and she died the next day. So she actually had a time pretty good.
Yeah, when I knew her, I didn't see a husband.
No, he was gone by
So
the
this is
19th.
about 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, but she was still here at the ice cream shop, and she probably left
Shortly after that.
shortly after I stopped coming too. Because I stopped coming here in 58, made one trip back in 63, and I haven't been back in over 50 years since then.
Maud's uncle, or her husband's uncle, Fred, was actually the inventor of the teletype machine.
Wow.
So that's why you'll have connections with that type of thing in the family as well. And like I said, then at the time your grandfather came, with the guiding and things like that, people would say, well, how could guiding and sport fishing be such a big industry? At that time, the only industries around here were paying $1 a day. Guiding paid you $2.50. So it was very popular. You know, like guides provided boats, they provided the tents. For $1.50 more, you could get an extra man to do your cooking and that type of thing. So that's where your grandfather actually came here, and that was that time period.
Well, now the village is just a shadow of what it used to be.
Yep, now there's no industry anymore.
No industry.
The last industry closed in 1989, which was the satellite tracking station. It was the first satellite tracking station in Canada. It was just up the road here. The pulp mill burnt down in 1947. That was the end of that. That was the second oldest pulp mill in the province. It had been started by Nova Scotia Wood Pulp Company in 1881 and operated until 1947 when it burned. Those are closed down. Now today, there's not even any industry much except small local businesses in the area. Big pulp paper mill, Bowaters Mersey, which employed most of the people. It closed a few years ago.
That was in Liverpool?
That was in Brooklyn, yep.
Brooklyn, right.
Yep.
Not near the Liverpool line.
Yep.
And this used to be Crocker's General Store.
Yeah, Del Croker had this store probably over 60 years. Del Croker operated this store. Yeah, the store itself has been on this site. There's been a store on this site since as early as the 1830s, so it's one of the oldest continuously operating stores in the province. This particular store was built by Solomon and Neville, who were married to two of the Mac girls, and they operated as a general store in competition with the Mac store, which was across the road. So.
I was running late too.
Well, I think that brings us pretty much up to date on the local Mill Village history, and I want to thank you very much, Blake, for all that you've illuminated us on about this This little village has been around a long time, and it has a real local flavor and a history to it.
You're welcome.
All right, and that ends part 2. And I think that should do it.